My name is Amelia, and before I tell you the story, let me start with a moment that burned itself into my memory forever. The champagne flute hit the floor with a sharp crack. Shards glittered under the chandeliers like broken stars scattering across the polished ballroom floor. Gasps echoed through the hall. James, my sister's brand new husband, was staring at her as if the world had just ended. His voice, jagged with rage, cut through the music. Explain that you slept with your sister's husband, that the child you are carrying might not even be mine. The crowd fell silent, frozen in shock. Guests stood motionless, some with forks halfway to their mouths, others gripping glasses so tight they might shatter too. My sister Linda, radiant in her white gown, stumbled back as if the words had physically struck her. Tears streaked her face, smudging the flawless makeup that had taken hours to apply. My husband Darren pushed forward through the stunned crowd. His face looked torn in two, pulled between me and her. He looked like an actor who had forgotten his lines, lost in the middle of the stage. James lunged at him, grabbing his tuxedo lapels, spitting accusations straight into his face. Darren's silence was the answer everyone feared. A single punch landed, echoing like thunder in the ballroom, and my husband fell to the ground, blood dripping onto the spotless white floor. The band stopped. The photographer kept snapping as if this chaos was part of the event. My parents stood frozen, my mother's hand pressed over her lips, my father's face purple with fury. And me, I was standing there watching the wedding I had helped plan for months, the wedding where I was the maid of honor, the wedding where I had smiled through every rehearsal and every toast. I stood and watched the world catch fire because I had lit the match. My name is Amelia, and this is how I destroyed the two people I once loved most, not with lies, not with violence, but with the truth they thought I would never uncover. It all began long before that shattered champagne glass. 7 months before the wedding, I believed my life was steady, secure, unshakable. I had a husband who still kissed my forehead each morning, a beautiful colonial-style house with white shutters and a wraparound porch, and a career that gave me purpose. My sister was my best friend, my partner in late-night calls and Sunday brunches. To the outside world, we were the picture of family. But appearances lie, and lies rot everything from the inside. That night at the wedding, when secrets exploded in front of 300 guests, I realized something powerful truth can destroy, but it can also set you free. And before I continue, I want to pause for just one moment. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? I love seeing the places our community connects from it. Reminds me that no matter how painful or isolating betrayal feels, we are never truly alone. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe so you don't miss stories like mine. Because the story you're about to hear, it isn't just about betrayal. It's about the slow cracking of perfection, the way little things grow into earthquakes, and the way one woman finally decided to choose truth over illusion. That wedding night was only the ending scene. To understand how everything collapsed, we need to go back to when I thought my life was perfect, back to the moment before the cracks began to show. 7 months before my sister's wedding, I believed I had it all. My name is Amelia, and at 31 years old, I thought my life was carved in stone. I was a pediatric nurse, proud of the long hours I spent helping children heal, and I returned each evening to a house that looked like it belonged on a postcard. White shutters, a wraparound porch, a front yard filled with flowers I planted myself. It wasn't just a house, it was the picture of stability, a symbol of everything I had worked for. And then, of course, there was Darren, my husband, the man who had once made my heart race with a single look. He had sandy brown hair that always seemed to fall perfectly into place, and green eyes that crinkled when he laughed. He carried himself like a man who belonged in every room he entered, confident and magnetic. People noticed him, women noticed him, and for years I was proud of that, proud that he was mine. Our life together had routines that felt sacred. Thursday nights were for wine and movies, Saturdays for morning runs and breakfast at our favorite diner. Evenings ended with him leaning down to kiss my forehead, whispering "Morning beautiful," as if it were a promise of tomorrow. 8 years of marriage had given us laughter, tears, heartbreak, and joy. We had weathered storms together like the miscarriage that left me hollow when Darren cried harder than I did. I believed him when he swore in the rain that night, "I'll never be the man who hurts you." I clung to those words as if they were scripture. But perfection is fragile, and sometimes the cracks appear before you realize the foundation has shifted. At first it was nothing more than missed dinners. Working late, he said, pressing a kiss to my hair before disappearing into the night. Then weekends at the office. His phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, suddenly lived in his pocket, locked behind a new passcode. I asked him about it, laughing nervously. He waved me off. New firm policy. Confidential clients. And because I loved him, because I trusted him, I believed it. Or maybe I wanted to believe it. Meanwhile, Linda was the opposite of me in every way. My younger sister wild, where I was steady, impulsive, where I was careful. She had golden waves that looked like they belonged in a shampoo commercial, and she made her living posting curated pieces of her life online. I used to tease her, "I save lives, you pose for them." She would laugh and say, "You got the brains, I got the beauty." Despite our differences, she was my best friend. We shopped together, swapped secrets late at night, and ate brunch with our parents every Sunday. So when she announced her engagement to James, a thoughtful tech entrepreneur who adored her, I was genuinely thrilled. I remember her bouncing on my couch, clutching my hands, begging me to be her maid of honor. "It'll be perfect," she squealed. Perfect. That word again. It was beginning to feel like a curse, because as the wedding planning consumed our weekends, dress fittings, cake tastings, endless venue tours, I began to notice things. Not about the flowers or the gowns, but about the way Darren smiled a little too easily when Linda entered the room, the way her eyes lingered on him just a moment too long. Once, as we flipped through floral arrangements, Linda sighed, "James is wonderful, but Darren, he has that whole sophisticated lawyer charm." Her words were light, playful, but for the briefest moment, her gaze darkened with something else. I told myself I imagined it. I had to. She was my sister, he was my husband, the people I trusted most. Looking back now, it's almost laughable how hard I tried to smother the truth. I clung to every memory that proved Darren's love for me. The honeymoon where he held my hair as I vomited from food poisoning. The way he whispered promises when we lost our baby. The man who once swore never to hurt me couldn't possibly betray me. But lies have a way of slipping through the cracks. I didn't know then that I was already standing on the edge of disaster. I didn't know that the man who kissed my forehead each morning had already kissed my sister's lips in secret. That the woman I trusted to stand beside me at every milestone was already holding a secret that would shatter everything I thought I knew. Back then, I still believed in perfect. Before I take you deeper, I want to pause here for just a second. If you're listening to this and you've ever thought your life looked perfect from the outside but felt shaky underneath, leave a comment. I want to know how many of us have lived behind facades smiling, while cracks spread silently beneath. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Stories like mine prove that even the most flawless masks eventually break. 'Cause my mask was about to slip. And when it did, the pieces cut deeper than I ever thought possible. At first, the changes were subtle, small shifts I brushed aside as the natural wear of long marriage. But the truth has a way of whispering before it screams. Darren began working late more often. What used to be the occasional long night at the office became every week. Soon, it was weekends too. He would come home after midnight, loosen his tie, kiss me on the cheek, and collapse into bed. His phone, once abandoned on the coffee table, was now always locked and tucked into his pocket. When I teased him about it, his response came too quickly. New security policy at the firm. Clients demand privacy. He smiled as if that explanation solved everything. And I nodded, though something in my stomach twisted. I reminded myself of who he had been. The man who once held me close when I cried over losing our pregnancy. The man who promised me in the pouring rain that he would never betray me. That man couldn't possibly be lying. Could he? But the lies grew roots. It wasn't just Darren. Linda began showing little changes too. My younger sister had always been carefree, her conversations full of social media and brand deals. But suddenly she asked questions about legal dramas. She watched lawyer shows, laughed about understanding James's world. Except James didn't work in law. He worked in tech. I noticed, but I told myself she was just curious. It was easier than admitting the truth. Family dinners grew uncomfortable. Darren and Linda would exchange glances across the table, subtle as shadows but impossible to ignore. Their laughter overlapped too easily, like a secret melody I wasn't invited to hear. At Sunday brunch, both claimed they were busy on the same weekends. I swallowed my suspicions with orange juice and smiled for my parents. The cracks widened one night at Linda's engagement party. Our parents had strung fairy lights across the backyard. The air buzzed with celebration glasses, clinking music, drifting from hidden speakers. I went into the kitchen to refill the cheese platter. That's when I heard it. Darren's low laugh. The laugh he used to save for me. Linda's giggle followed light and breathy. "You can't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" Darren replied softly. "It's true." I froze. My fingers tightened around the tray. I stepped out onto the porch, plastering a bright smile on my face. They jumped apart instantly, guilt flashing across their faces before vanishing. "There you are," I said cheerfully. "People are looking for the bride-to-be." Linda fumbled with her dress. "We were just getting some air." "Talking about Darren's big case," Darren added quickly. "The Brett case," I asked sharply. "I thought that was confidential." He didn't miss a beat, only the boring parts, nothing classified. They slipped past me into the party, leaving me standing under the fairy lights with the cheese tray and a storm inside my chest. For a long moment, I stared at the twinkling bulbs strung across the yard, telling myself I was imagining things, telling myself I was being paranoid. But deep down I knew, the human heart is a collector of evidence. Every odd smile, every canceled dinner, every laugh not meant for you, it all piles up until you can't ignore it. And my heart was already building a case, even if my mind refused to read the file. Still, I swallowed the truth, convincing myself I was crazy. I wanted to believe my husband. I wanted to trust my sister. I wanted to hold on to the illusion of perfection, even as it slipped like sand through my fingers. Looking back now, I wonder how many people saw it. Did my mother notice the careful way they avoided each other's gaze? Did my father hear the hesitations in their laughter? Or did everyone like me choose to look away because the truth was too ugly to bear? I should have asked the questions then. I should have demanded answers, but I didn't. Instead, I let the cracks grow wider. And before I continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever ignored your instincts because you didn't want the answer? Leave a comment below. I read every story. Your words remind me that none of us are alone in this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. These stories prove how powerful intuition can be. Because my intuition was right, and the storm I was avoiding was already rolling toward me. The night of Linda's engagement party should have been a celebration. It was the kind of evening people dreamed of: fairy lights strung between oak trees, champagne bubbling in tall glasses, soft music drifting across the backyard. Guests mingled on the lawn, laughter rising into the warm air. On the surface, it was beautiful. But beauty often hides rot. I remember stepping onto the porch, balancing a tray of cheeses when I saw them. Darren and Linda, they weren't kissing, they weren't even touching, but the space between them vibrated like a wire pulled too tight. His head tilted toward her. Her laugh, low, intimate, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in years, cut through me like a blade. "You can't say things like that," she whispered, her tone playful but nervous. "Why not?" Darren replied, his voice smooth. "It's true." The tray nearly slipped from my hands. My heart pounded so loud I was sure they heard it. I forced my voice into something bright, cheerful. "There you are, everyone's looking for the bride-to-be." They leapt apart instantly like children caught misbehaving. Linda smoothed her dress, her eyes fixed anywhere but on me. "We were just getting some air," she said too quickly. Talking about the Brett case, Darren added, his smile practiced. The Brett case, I asked, narrowing my eyes. Isn't that confidential? He shrugged lightly. Just the boring parts. Nothing important. And then they walked past me back into the glow of the party, leaving me frozen under the fairy lights. The tray felt heavy in my arms. My smile stayed plastered on my face, but inside something broke. I watched them through the night, my eyes sharp, catching every small exchange. The way their bodies angled slightly toward one another, the stolen glances, the quick, nervous laughter. To anyone else it looked innocent, but I knew better. I could feel it, the shift, the betrayal growing like mold in the dark. I told myself I was imagining things, that my exhaustion was painting shadows where there were none. I was good at lying to myself back then, because facing the truth would have meant tearing apart everything I believed in. Still, the doubt lingered. The music swelled as couples drifted onto the dance floor. James held Linda's hand, twirling her with a smile so full of love it made my chest ache. He didn't see it. He didn't notice the flicker in her eyes when Darren passed by. My parents didn't see it either. My mother fussed with the flower arrangements. My father laughed with relatives. Everyone was blind, or maybe they just didn't want to see. But I saw, and once you see, you can't unsee. That night I stood on the porch long after the party ended, staring at the empty glasses and scattered rose petals. My stomach twisted with a sickness I couldn't name. A voice inside me whispered something is wrong, and for the first time I couldn't silence it. Looking back, that moment was the first real crack in the glass. It was the warning I ignored. If I had confronted them, then if I had demanded answers, maybe the story would have ended differently. But I stayed silent. I smiled through clenched teeth and swallowed my suspicion. Because I loved them both, my husband, my sister, the two people I trusted most in this world. And yet deep down I knew. Before I go on, I want to ask you something. Have you ever caught a glimpse of the truth in a single moment, just one laugh, one glance that changed how you saw everything? Share it in the comments. Your stories matter. They remind us that we're not alone in the quiet suspicions we carry. And if you're new here, subscribe so you won't miss what comes next, because the cracks in my story were about to split wide open. That night on the porch was only the beginning, and the truth waiting for me would be far darker than I ever imagined. 3 weeks before the wedding, I went in for my annual checkup at the hospital. It should have been routine blood pressure labs, a polite reminder to take better care of myself. I never expected that appointment to twist my world upside down. I was walking down the sterile white corridor when I ran into Dr. Patricia Morse. She had been Linda's gynecologist since college, and over the years she had become a friendly acquaintance of mine. She greeted me warmly, her smile genuine. "Amelia, how's the wedding planning going? Linda must be over the moon." I laughed tiredly. She's excited. Honestly, I'll be relieved when it's all over. Planning a wedding feels like running a marathon in high heels. Patricia chuckled, then her expression softened. "Well, just make sure she takes it easy, okay? First trimester can be rough." The words echoed in my ears, distant and distorted like I was underwater. First trimester. My mind repeated it again and again. First trimester. I forced a smile. Oh, she hasn't told me yet. Patricia's face drained of color. She didn't— "Oh my God, Amelia, I thought the family knew. I just assumed—" "She's private about these things," I interrupted quickly, my voice steady though my hands trembled. "Of course I know. I just didn't realize you did." Relief washed over Patricia's face. "Yes, well, give her my best." She hurried away, leaving me stranded in the hallway, the floor spinning beneath my feet. Linda was pregnant. My little sister was carrying a child. But instead of joy, all I felt was dread crawling through my veins like ice. I did the math, slowly, carefully. If she was in her first trimester, now that meant conception had been roughly 8 weeks ago. 8 weeks ago. My mind raced back to the engagement party, the porch, the laughter I had overheard, the way they had jumped apart when I appeared. No, I told myself. James was the father. He had to be. They were getting married. They were happy. That was the logical answer. But the timing lined up too perfectly. My stomach twisted so violently I had to grip the wall to keep myself upright. That night I lay awake beside Darren, staring at the ceiling while his steady breathing filled the room. He had no idea that Patricia's slip had cracked open the fragile wall I had built to hold my suspicions at bay. He had no idea that I was already counting weeks, already measuring timelines, already whispering to myself that maybe the unthinkable was true. But love is stubborn. Hope is cruel. I told myself I was crazy, that I was seeing shadows where there were none. Yet every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda's face, her glowing smile, the way her hand drifted unconsciously toward her stomach. And beneath it all, the whisper of betrayal grew louder. I had two choices: bury my suspicions and carry on, or face the truth head on. I wasn't ready to burn my world down, not yet. But the decision was no longer in my hands. The truth was coming whether I wanted it or not. And when it arrived, it would consume everything. Before I continue, I want to ask you something personal. If someone you trusted with your whole heart suddenly showed cracks in their story, would you dig for the truth, or would you cling to the comfort of lies? Tell me in the comments. I read them all. And don't forget to subscribe, because what came next for me was proof that denial only delays the inevitable. The pregnancy should have been a celebration. Instead, it was a countdown, and I knew the explosion was coming. Once suspicion takes root, it grows like ivy, twisting, climbing, choking every part of your mind, until you cannot think of anything else. After hearing Patricia's words about Linda's pregnancy, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed proof. Not whispers, not guesses. Proof. Darren always kept his home office locked. He said it was for attorney-client privilege, confidential files, but I knew better. Years ago, when he lost his key, I had a duplicate made for emergencies. He never asked about it again, assuming I had thrown it away. He was wrong. One evening after he left for another late meeting, I stood outside that office door, my hands shaking around the small brass key. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Opening that door meant crossing a line, but the truth was already clawing at me. I slid the key into the lock. The click sounded like a gunshot in the silence. His computer sat on the desk, glowing faintly, password protected. Darren always thought of himself as clever, but his arrogance blinded him. I tried our wedding anniversary month, day, year. The screen unlocked instantly. My heart sank. How could something as sacred as our vows become a shield for his secrets? I searched emails. Nothing incriminating. I checked browsing history. Clean. Too clean. Almost rehearsed. For a moment, I thought I had been wrong, that my paranoia had spun lies out of shadows. But then I remembered a line from a true crime podcast: "People always forget the cloud." My fingers trembled as I opened his photo backups. Thousands of images scrolled past family gatherings, work dinners, casual selfies, normal life. But tucked inside a folder labeled legal research was something entirely different. The first image stole my breath. Linda at the beach, hair whipping in the wind. Then a selfie in a hotel bar, her hand on his chest, his arm curled possessively around her waist. My pulse thundered. One after another, the photos revealed a story I never wanted to see. Stolen moments, secret meetings, smiles meant only for each other. And then I found it. A photo of a pregnancy test. Positive. The timestamp said 2 weeks after the engagement party. The background wasn't neutral or random. It was my bedroom, my bed, our sheets. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stop the scream that threatened to tear through me. My chest burned, my eyes blurred with tears. I sat there staring at that single photo until it seared into my brain an image I could never erase. Somehow I still had the presence of mind to cover my tracks. I closed every file, cleared the history, locked the office behind me. Only then did I run to the bathroom, falling to my knees over the toilet as bile rose in my throat. That night I crawled into bed beside Darren. He kissed my forehead, whispering, "I love you," as if those words still had meaning. I stared into the dark, silent, a storm brewing inside me. He thought he had fooled me. He thought I would never know. But I knew now, and I would not forgive. Over the next days, I became an actress in my own life. I smiled at breakfast, kissed him goodbye at the door, helped Linda choose flowers, dresses, shoes. At the rehearsal dinner, I stood beside her, raised my glass, and gave a speech about love and loyalty. She hugged me tightly afterward, pressing her slight baby bump against me. "I'm so lucky to have you," she whispered. And I smiled because that was what sisters were supposed to do. But inside, I was already planning her ruin. Before I move forward, I want to ask you this. If you discovered undeniable proof that your partner and your sibling had betrayed you, would you confront them right away, or would you wait for the perfect moment to strike? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Because the moment I chose changed everything. I had the truth. Now I needed the stage, and their wedding day would be perfect. Perfect for destruction. For the next 2 weeks, I became someone else entirely. On the surface, I was still Amelia, the loyal wife, the supportive sister, the dutiful maid of honor. But underneath, I was something sharper, something cold. I was a performer rehearsing for the biggest stage of my life, and every smile I gave was another line in the script. Each morning I woke beside Darren, forcing myself not to flinch when he brushed his lips against my temple. Each afternoon I answered Linda's calls, helping her with last-minute wedding details, laughing on cue, pretending I wasn't counting down the hours until her world would collapse. At night, when everyone else slept, I sat awake in the dark, whispering the words I would one day speak in front of hundreds. I told myself to wait. Timing mattered. If I confronted them too soon, they would spin lies, hide evidence, deny everything. But if I waited, if I chose the perfect moment, I could end them both with a single strike. The rehearsal dinner was my test run, a lavish affair at the hotel ballroom tables lined with champagne flutes and roses. Family and friends filled the space, all eager to celebrate. Linda beamed as she clutched James's hand. Darren sat beside me, his green eyes glinting with pride as though nothing were wrong. When it came time for speeches, I stood glass in hand. The room fell silent. I spoke of childhood memories, of sisterly bonds, of how love requires honesty and trust. My voice never wavered, though inside my heart beat like a war drum. Linda's eyes welled with tears. Grace is the best sister anyone could ask for, she told the crowd, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so lucky to have her. Lucky. The word tasted like poison. I hugged her tightly, careful not to let my face betray the storm inside. I felt the swell of her stomach press against me, a brutal reminder of what she carried, my husband's child, perhaps growing inside her while she smiled and called me family. That night, Darren found me on the hotel balcony. He slipped a glass of wine into my hand, his arm wrapping around me as though nothing in the world was wrong. Beautiful speech, he whispered. You made me fall in love with you all over again. I forced a smile. Did I? He kissed my temple, oblivious to the rage radiating off my skin. After the wedding, let's take a vacation. Just the two of us. Start fresh. His words were ash in my mouth. He truly believed I was still his. That I would stand by him forever, never daring to question, never daring to fight back. He didn't know I had already sharpened the knife. I leaned into his chest, masking my revulsion. That sounds nice, I said softly. But in my mind I whispered, it will never happen. You don't get fresh starts. Not after this. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for what Linda thought would be the happiest day of her life. I helped her into her dress, fastening buttons with steady hands. She wore our grandmother's pearls, a borrowed garter, and under it all the life growing inside her. You look beautiful, I told her, because it was true, and because that was what sisters say. She smiled through tears. Everything is exactly how I dreamed it would be. I adjusted her veil and met her eyes. Is it everything you dreamed of? For a split second, her smile faltered. Then she laughed lightly, brushing off the weight of my words. Of course. Why would you ask that? I smiled back, hiding the venom behind my teeth. 'Cause I was waiting for the moment when her perfect dream would collapse. Before I take you into that day, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to wear a mask, pretend everything was fine, when inside you were breaking? Share your story in the comments. It's a way for us to stand together, to remind each other that silence doesn't mean weakness. And don't forget to subscribe, because the mask I wore that day set the stage for the twist you won't see coming. The performance was almost over, and soon the curtain would fall. The wedding day unfolded like a carefully painted picture. The church was packed with over 300 guests, sunlight spilling through stained glass, music swelling as the ceremony began. From the outside, it was flawless, a dream wedding. But I knew better. I walked down the aisle ahead of Linda, my bouquet trembling slightly in my grip. Darren stood among the groomsmen at the altar, his tuxedo crisp, his smile practiced. When his eyes met Linda's as she entered, I saw it. That same expression he once reserved for me, the look that used to make my knees weak. Now it was hers. The vows were spoken, rings exchanged, and applause thundered through the church. "You may kiss the bride," the minister said, and James kissed his new wife with tears in his eyes. Guests cheered, clapped, and rose to their feet. I clapped too, my smile fixed, though my chest ached with a truth no one else knew. The reception at the Riverside Country Club was extravagant. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, a 10-piece band filled the air with music. Ice sculptures gleamed on every table. Every detail screamed luxury. Darren and I sat at the head table with the rest of the wedding party, the perfect couple, smiling for photos. He slipped his hand onto my back, brushed his fingers against mine. 6 months earlier, that touch would have thrilled me. Now it made my skin crawl. "You look beautiful tonight," he whispered. I forced a smile. "As beautiful as the bride." He chuckled softly. "No one is as beautiful as the bride on her wedding day." I tilted my head, my smile sharp. "Ah yes, the rules. You've always been so good at following those." He gave me a puzzled look, but was distracted as the best man rose to give his speech. Laughter filled the hall, stories of James and Linda's romance jokes about children and happily ever after. Linda's hand drifted to her stomach at that last part. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. Then came my turn. I stood tapping my glass with a spoon. The room quieted, hundreds of eyes turning toward me. I smiled, the perfect maid of honor, and began. "Linda and I have been through everything together. Childhood adventures, teenage heartbreaks, adult challenges. And now I've watched her grow into the radiant woman standing here tonight." Tears filled Linda's eyes. James beamed at me, full of gratitude. Darren looked at me with pride, completely unaware of what was coming. "But the thing about love," I continued, my voice steady, "is that it requires trust. Absolute, unshakable trust. Secrets are poison, and honesty is the only foundation strong enough to last." A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Linda's smile faltered. I raised my glass. "So here's to James and Linda. May your marriage be built on truth. May you never have secrets between you." Applause rang out. Guests toasted. Darren leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Beautiful speech, baby. You always know what to say." I squeezed his hand so hard his knuckles whitened. "I learned from the best," I whispered. That was only the rehearsal. The real performance was yet to come. Later, as the band played soft music and James led Linda to the dance floor, the photographer circled them, capturing what everyone thought was bliss. Darren leaned close to me. "They look happy, don't they?" "Looks," I said, my tone flat, "can be deceiving." Before I continue, let me ask you, if you were sitting there holding on to the kind of truth that could shatter an entire family, would you stay silent to protect appearances, or would you dare to speak? Leave your thoughts below. I read every single comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment. Because what happened next turned that flawless wedding into the stage for the ugliest truth. The champagne was flowing, the band played louder, laughter echoed, and I knew my time was almost here. The celebration carried on with music and laughter, but I was no longer part of it. My body was there, seated at the head table, but my mind was sharp and restless, scanning every detail like a detective at a crime scene. I watched Linda carefully. She glowed, yes, but not only with bridal bliss. There was a different kind of glow, the kind that came from life growing inside her. Every time someone joked about children, her hand brushed her stomach as if by instinct. Darren noticed, too. I caught the faint flicker in his eyes each time she did it. He tried to mask it with a smile, but I saw through him. I saw everything now. As the night wore on, I excused myself from the crowd and slipped away to the bridal suite. The hallway was quiet, the muffled sound of music barely reaching me. Inside the room was empty, except for Linda's belongings neatly arranged. Her phone sat on the dresser, plugged into a charger. My heart pounded. I knew her passcode. We had always shared everything. Sisters were supposed to. Except she had kept this one secret. I unlocked it quickly, scanning through texts and photos. At first it looked clean. Too clean. She had been careful, no obvious conversations with Darren, no blatant exchanges. But she had made one mistake. In her photo roll was a hidden folder, locked, but not secure enough for me to miss. I opened it. The breath rushed from my lungs. There they were, images of Darren and Linda together. Hotel room selfies, her hair messy, his arm draped over her bare shoulder, a champagne bottle on the nightstand, the bedding unmistakable. I knew that hotel, the Marriott downtown. She had told me she was meeting a florist that night. The timestamp on the photo told the truth. 11:47 at night. 2 weeks after the engagement party. The same night Darren had texted me at 11:52 that he was leaving the office. At 12:15, he had climbed into our bed smelling faintly of hotel soap. The evidence was undeniable. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It wasn't suspicion. It was fact captured in pixels and timestamps. I forwarded every image to myself, then carefully deleted the traces from her phone. My hands didn't shake. My breath was steady. Rage had burned away the weakness inside me, leaving only cold precision. I placed her phone back exactly where I had found it. At that moment, one of the bridesmaids walked in, startled. "Oh, Amelia, you scared me, looking for a quiet moment too." I smiled smoothly, slipping past her. "Yes, just needed some air." Back in the ballroom, the party was in full swing. Guests laughed too loudly, heels kicked off, ties loosened. The cake had been cut, the bouquet tossed. Perfect chaos. And within that chaos, opportunity. I sipped water at the bar, scanning the dance floor, watching Linda twirl under the lights. James gazing at her with pure devotion he didn't know was misplaced. I clenched the stem of my glass so tightly it nearly broke. She was dancing with the man who loved her unconditionally while carrying a baby that might not even belong to him. And Darren, my husband, stood nearby, his eyes never quite leaving her. I knew then that silence would kill me. I had carried the truth too long already. It was time. Before I go on, I want to leave you with a thought. If you had the power to expose a lie that would ruin everything family marriage reputation, would you do it? Or would you swallow the truth to keep the peace? Comment below, because this is where my story shifted forever. And subscribe, if you haven't already, because what came next was the moment I pulled the pin on the grenade. The night was still young. The band played, the chandeliers sparkled, the guests laughed, and I was ready to burn it all down. The father-daughter dance had just ended when I decided it was time to make my move. Guests were teary-eyed, recording on their phones, clapping as Linda twirled under our father's arm. To everyone else, it was tender. To me, it was sickening. The photographer captured every moment while I slipped away from the crowd. I found Darren at the bar, his tie loosened, a glass of scotch in hand. His posture was relaxed, as if he hadn't just betrayed me with the one person I should have been able to trust most. "There you are," I said, sliding my arm through his, my smile a mask. He looked surprised. "Just needed a refill. Want one?" "No," I said, my voice low. "I want to talk, privately." His eyes narrowed. "Now, during the reception?" "Yes, now, unless you'd prefer I say what I need to say here in front of everyone." The color drained from his face. Guilty people always follow. I led him out to the terrace. The night air was cool, strung with golden lights, the river shimmering in the distance. It was almost beautiful, almost perfect for what was about to happen. Darren joined me a few minutes later, his face carefully composed. "What's this about?" he asked, trying for casual. I turned to face him, no longer bothering to hide the fury boiling inside me. "How long?" He blinked. "What?" "How long have you been sleeping with my sister?" My voice sliced the night like broken glass. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Amelia, I don't know what you think." "I have photos," I interrupted sharply. "From the Marriott. From that night, 8 weeks ago, when you told me you were working late." His shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of him instantly. He sat heavily on a stone bench, head in his hands. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. The engagement party. We were both drunk. You were inside and we were talking and it just happened. Then again, 8 weeks ago, that was supposed to be the end. We promised it would never happen again. The words cut deeper than any blade. Is the baby yours? I demanded. His head snapped up. The baby? Yes, Darren, the baby. Is it yours? I don't know, he whispered. She said it's James's. But the timing, it's possible. Either way. I laughed a harsh, ugly sound. Possible. You risked everything for possible. He reached for me. Please, Amelia. I love you. I've always loved you. Linda was just different, exciting, wrong. His green eyes shone desperately. I knew it was wrong, but that's what made it. God, I'm so messed up. You're not messed up, I snapped. You're cruel, you're selfish, and you disgust me. We sat in silence, the muffled music from the ballroom playing behind us. Finally, he whispered, What are you going to do? I smiled coldly. I'm going to give my sister a wedding gift she'll never forget. I walked away, leaving him slumped and broken on the terrace. Before I reveal what came next, I want to hear from you. If you were standing in my shoes with the truth burning inside you and the proof in your hands, would you have confronted them quietly, or would you have exposed them for the world to see? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't yet, subscribe now, because what I did next turned the reception into a battlefield. Inside, the music swelled, guests laughed, champagne flowed, and I returned ready to destroy it all. The ballroom pulsed with celebration when I slipped back inside. Couples crowded the dance floor, the band's music soaring beneath crystal chandeliers. Glasses clinked, laughter spilled across the room, and waiters darted between tables with trays of champagne. To everyone else, it was the perfect wedding reception. But to me, it was a stage, and I was about to step into the spotlight. I made my way to the band leader, slipping a folded bill into his palm. One more toast, I whispered. He grinned and nodded, announcing me with a flourish. The microphone crackled as I lifted it, my hand steady despite the storm inside me. Good evening, everyone. I began, my smile bright, my tone sweet. I know I already gave a speech tonight, but with the wonderful news about the baby, I felt inspired to say a few more words. The crowd cheered. Linda's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. James's arm wrapped proudly around her shoulders. Their faces glowed with joy, his pure, hers fragile. I continued, my voice carrying across the hall. Becoming a parent changes everything. It teaches you about truth, about honesty, about being someone your child can look up to. And isn't it beautiful that Linda and James are starting their family right away? More applause, more cheers. I waited for silence, letting the moment stretch until the room leaned forward, eager for more. Although I said softly, letting the word hang, I can't help but wonder about the timing. A nervous laugh rippled through the guests. Linda's smile faltered, her knuckles whitening around her champagne glass. You see, I went on 8 weeks ago was a busy time. Wedding planning, work obligations, late-night meetings. I paused, my eyes locking on hers. I remember one night in particular. Linda, you told me you had a meeting with the florist at the Marriott. Isn't that right? The blood drained from her face. Murmurs rose across the room. James frowned, looking between us. And Darren, I said, shifting my gaze to my husband, who had just entered from the terrace, his face tight with dread. You were working late that night, too. What a coincidence that you both happened to be at the same hotel. The ballroom went silent, too silent, the kind of silence where everyone senses a knife hanging in the air. I smiled sweetly, but I'm sure it's nothing. Just a funny little overlap in busy schedules. I tilted my head, although it might explain why Linda has been sick in the mornings. Morning sickness. Or maybe guilt. Gasps erupted. My mother's voice sliced through the chaos. Amelia, what are you doing? I turned toward her, still smiling. I'm telling the truth, Mother. Something that seems rare in this family tonight. James shot to his feet, his face a storm. What is she talking about, Linda? Linda's lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at Darren, then at me, then back at her husband. The silence was answer enough. Tell him, I pressed my voice sharp. Tell your husband why you don't know who the father of your baby is. James's champagne flute shattered on the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The ballroom erupted into chaos, gasps, shouts, guests scrambling to their feet. Linda reached for James, sobbing. Please let me explain. But he stumbled back, devastation carved across his face. In that moment, the perfect wedding collapsed into ruin. Before I go further, I want to stop and ask you, if you had been in that ballroom watching the truth explode in front of hundreds of people, would you have believed me, or would you have believed them? Drop your answer in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because the fallout from that moment was far worse than even I imagined. Because what began with shattered glass would end with shattered lives. The sound of the glass shattering still rang in my ears when James's face crumpled. His knuckles clenched, his body trembling as though the world had tilted beneath him. "Is it true?" he demanded, his voice raw, pointing at Darren. "Did you sleep with my wife?" The room froze. Even the band stopped playing instruments, hanging uselessly at their sides. Every guest held their breath, waiting for the answer. Darren's silence was all the confirmation James needed. He lunged, grabbing Darren by the lapels, his fury erupting in a single punch that cracked against Darren's jaw. Blood streamed down his face as he crashed onto the pristine white floor. Guests gasped, some screamed, but no one moved. "James, stop," Linda cried, clutching her dress as she tried to pull him back. But James had already torn himself away, stumbling toward the exit, devastation painted across every line of his face. "Please, James," she wailed, chasing after him. But he pushed through the crowd, gone before she could catch him. All around me, people whispered, horrified. Phones were raised discreetly, some snapping pictures, others filming the disaster unfolding in real time. The photographer, bless his misguided professionalism, continued to shoot, documenting every shattered moment of the wedding meant to be perfect. My parents stood frozen. My mother's hand covered her mouth, eyes wide with tears. My father's face had turned a dangerous shade of purple. "You destroyed everything," Linda sobbed, spinning on me, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. "How could you do this?" "How could I?" I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "You slept with my husband, twice that I know of." "How many more times, Linda? How many lies did you tell me while I helped you plan this wedding?" Her lips trembled. "It was a mistake." "No," I snapped. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is leaving the stove on. This was a choice. Repeated choices. And you made them with the one man who swore never to hurt me." Darren staggered to his feet, a napkin pressed to his bloody nose. "Amelia, please," he choked. "We need to talk." "Talk," I spat. "Now you want to talk after months of lies. After you made vows to me, and then broke them in my own bed." Guests were already fleeing, clutching purses and jackets, eager to escape the scandal. I could hear their whispers. "This will be the talk of the town for years." My father finally snapped. He stormed toward Darren, his fists clenched. "You bastard, I welcomed you into my family, trusted you with my daughter, and you betrayed both of them." Before anyone could stop him, he struck Darren harder than James had. Darren collapsed again, this time staying down, humiliated in front of everyone. Linda shrieked, rushing to his side. "Daddy, stop, this isn't helping." But my father's fury was volcanic. "You betrayed your sister. You betrayed your husband. You betrayed us all." Linda's sobs filled the room. "I didn't mean..." "You meant to hide it?" I cut in, my voice low but steady. "You meant to let James raise a child that might not be his. You meant to smile at me while you carried Darren's baby." Silence followed. Even she couldn't deny it. The ballroom that had been filled with joy minutes earlier was reduced to rubble chairs, overturned glasses, shattered guests gone. Only family remained, staring at the wreckage of what had once been love and trust. Linda lifted her head, her voice small, broken. "What do you want me to say?" I looked at her, my chest heavy but unyielding. "Tell the truth. For once in your life, tell the truth." She looked at Darren, then at my parents, before whispering, "I fell in love with him." Her words pierced deeper than any blade. "Before I reveal the aftermath, let me pause. If someone close to you admitted this, admitted they loved the very person who betrayed you, what would you do? Forgive them, or cut them out forever? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe if you haven't yet. Because what came next proved that this wasn't just betrayal. It was war. The perfect wedding was gone, and from its ashes the real battle began. Her words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion, thick, choking, impossible to ignore. I fell in love with him. For a moment, even my fury stilled. Those 6 words shattered whatever fragile hope of denial remained. She wasn't just admitting to weakness or lust. She was admitting to something deeper, something permanent. I stared at her, my vision blurred by rage. So you took him, just because you wanted him. Tears streaked down her cheeks. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for it to happen. It always is with you, I snapped. My toys, my clothes, my friends. You've always taken what was mine. But this time, Linda, you didn't just take something. You destroyed everything. My mother's sobs filled the silence, mascara running down her face. Girls, please stop this. We're family. We can fix this. No, I said coldly, my voice slicing through her pleading. Some things don't get fixed. Some things burn. Darren finally staggered upright, his tuxedo bloodied, his face pale. He held out his hands, trembling. Amelia, please. Let's go home. We can talk. We can work through this. Home, I laughed, the sound bitter. You think we still have a home? You destroyed that the moment you touched her. It was a mistake, he begged. A terrible mistake. But I choose you. I choose our marriage. We can get counseling. We can rebuild. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on his. No. A mistake is leaving the toilet seat up. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was a decision, a series of them. Every text, every hotel, every lie. You chose her. Over me. Over us. The room was nearly empty now. Guests had fled, whispering into their phones, spreading the story that would stain our names for years. Only my family and the shattered wedding party remained. Linda took a shaky step forward, her gown dragging on the ruined floor. What about the baby, she whispered. What about it, I snapped. If it's Darren's, what happens then? I looked her dead in the eye. Then you'll figure it out, just like you figured out how to seduce my husband. You're resourceful, Linda. I'm sure you'll manage. You're being cruel, my mother whispered, her voice breaking. No, I corrected. I'm being honest, something this family seems to struggle with. Darren tried again, reaching for me. Please, Amelia, let's talk about this later. At home. Just us. I stepped back. What I want is a divorce. Tonight. Pack your things, get out of my house. He shook his head, desperate. Be reasonable. I smiled, sharp as glass. I've been reasonable for months. Reasonable when you worked late. Reasonable when you smelled like her perfume. Reasonable while you lied to my face. I'm done being reasonable. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Linda's muffled sobs. My father stood stiff, his jaw clenched, eyes burning with a mix of shame and fury. He didn't stop me. He didn't defend them. I turned, my heels clicking against the marble floor as I walked toward the exit. My voice carried behind me, low but clear. Don't follow me, any of you. And with that, I left the ruins of a wedding behind. Before I move forward, I want to pause. If you were me, would you have left that ballroom quietly, or would you have stood your ground until every secret was dragged into the light? Comment below, I want to know how you would have handled it. And don't forget to subscribe, because the choices I made after walking out of that room were colder and sharper than anything I had ever done before. The night wasn't over. For Darren and Linda, the devastation had only just begun. The ballroom doors closed behind me, but the echoes of chaos followed. Shattered glass, raised voices, sobs, all of it chased me into the night air. The Riverside Country Club, with its chandeliers and polished marble, had become a graveyard of trust. But for me, the night wasn't over, not even close. I drove home still in my bridesmaid dress, the sequins catching glimmers of passing streetlights. The radio played a love song. I twisted the dial off with a snap. Love songs were lies, and I wasn't listening to lies anymore. Inside the house, the silence wrapped around me like armor. But silence doesn't mean stillness. My mind was alive, spinning, sharpening. I wasn't just betrayed. I wasn't just humiliated. I was going to end him. I headed straight for Darren's office. I knew every drawer, every folder, every hiding place. Years of marriage teaches you where the skeletons live. I pulled files, bank statements, investment portfolios, and there it was, the paper trail he thought no one would follow. Company credit card charges, hotel rooms, dinners, all filed neatly under client meetings. Only I knew the truth. Those meetings had nothing to do with clients. They had everything to do with Linda. I gathered the documents and dialed a number I knew would answer. Harold, Darren's managing partner. Amelia, he said, groggy, confused. Is everything all right? Shouldn't you be at the wedding? The wedding's over, I said flatly. And you should know your partner has been using the company card for personal expenses, hotel rooms specifically, for his affair. Silence, then a heavy sigh. I have the statements, I continued. Dates times charges. Would you like me to email them, or should I bring them to Monday's meeting? Email them, Harold said quietly. I'll handle this internally. Good, I replied, hanging up before he could ask anything else. Darren's career was finished, but I wasn't done. I opened Facebook, scrolling through the flood of photos guests had already posted from the ceremony. Smiling faces, a perfect couple, a perfect night. I created a new album, The Truth About the Perfect Wedding. First, the screenshots from Linda's phone, the hotel selfie, the timestamp plain as day, then the credit card statements showing the Marriott charges. And finally, a photo I had taken myself just hours earlier, Darren's face bloodied after James punched him. Caption: when the groom finds out his bride slept with her sister's husband. I tagged everyone, family, friends, co-workers, every guest at the wedding. Then I hit share. Within minutes, notifications exploded. Comments, shocked reactions, messages from people demanding answers. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. I sank onto the couch, still in my glittering dress, my makeup smeared, my chest heaving. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. But I knew the storm was only beginning. Darren would come, Linda would cry, my parents would call. The fallout was coming heavy and merciless, and I was ready for it. Before I reveal what happened, when the world discovered the truth, let me ask you, would you have gone public like I did, posting the evidence for everyone to see? Or would you have kept it private, settling the score behind closed doors? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you haven't yet, subscribe now, because the morning after my post turned the scandal into an inferno. That night, as the notifications lit up my phone, I lay back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since the lies began, I felt in control. And I knew I would never let them take that from me again. I woke up still in my bridesmaid dress, the sequins rough against my skin, the smell of stale champagne clinging to the fabric. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the coffee table. 47 missed calls, more than 100 messages. Darren, Linda, my parents, mutual friends, even numbers I didn't recognize. The whole town had seen my Facebook post. Then came the pounding on the door. I rose slowly, straightening my hair in the mirror, wiping away the smudges of mascara. I wanted him to see me calm, composed, untouchable. When I opened the door, Darren stood there in his blood-stained tuxedo, his eyes red and glassy. He reeked of whiskey. "You ruined my life," he slurred. "No," I corrected, my voice icy. "You ruined your life. I just made sure the world knew about it." "They suspended me," he croaked. Harold called. "I'm under investigation. Do you know what this means?" "It means you should have thought twice before charging hotel rooms for your affair to the company card," I snapped. His shoulders sagged, but then he thrust his foot in the doorway, blocking me from shutting it. "I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem." 8 years, he pleaded. 8 years of marriage, Amelia. You're really throwing it all away over one mistake. 2 mistakes, I said coldly. At least 2 that I know of. And yes, you threw it away. Not me. His voice cracked. What about forgiveness? What about working through problems? I leaned closer. What about not sleeping with my sister? He flinched as if I had struck him. The Facebook posts, he whispered. Take them down. Please. They're defamation. Defamation. I laughed bitterly. They're the truth. If you don't like the truth, sue me. Oh wait, you'll need a lawyer for that. And money. 2 things you don't have anymore. I shoved his foot out of the way and slammed the door, locking it with a satisfying click. His pounding fists rattled the wood, but I didn't move. Eventually, the noise faded. From the window, I watched him stumble to his car, finally driving off. Moments later, my phone lit up again. This time it was my father. What have you done, Amelia? His voice was low, heavy with disappointment. What I had to do. Your mother is beside herself. Linda is devastated. James has left her, and he's filing for annulment. Good, he deserves better. And the baby, he pressed. It's not my problem, I said flatly. There was a long silence. Then your mother wants to have a family meeting. There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly. We're not a family anymore. I hung up before he could argue. That day, I boxed up Darren's belongings, his law books, his suits, the framed photo of us on our wedding day. I labeled each box with thick black marker cheater. By evening, the house was lighter, as though purging his presence cleared the air itself. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. Revenge had burned bright, but its fire left behind only ashes. And yet, I wasn't done. Because when Linda reached out next, whispering apologies through my voicemail, I realized she hadn't learned a thing. Before I reveal what I did next, I want to ask you, if someone betrayed you in the deepest way possible and then came crawling back with apologies, would you give them a second chance, or would you slam the door forever? Tell me in the comments. And make sure you subscribe, because the ending to this story isn't just about revenge, it's about rebuilding. And the lesson I learned will stay with you long after the credits roll. That night, as I stood in my quiet, empty house, one thought carried me to sleep. I had torn their perfect little lie to pieces, and now it was time to build a life of truth for myself. Spring arrived early that year. The first crocuses pushed through the last of the snow, delicate yet stubborn proof that new life could bloom even from frozen ground. I spent more and more time in my garden, my hands in the soil, planting roses where weeds once grew. Each bud felt like a small act of defiance, a promise to myself that beauty could come after ruin. The house was mine now, mine alone. The walls, once echoing with Darren's voice, now carried only silence and peace. I painted rooms in new colors, bought furniture he would have called frivolous, and filled every corner with things that reflected me, not us. With every change, I erased him further, until the life we'd shared was just a memory dust swept out with the trash. Sometimes I wondered if I had gone too far, if exposing the truth so publicly had been cruel. But then I remembered Linda's hand on her stomach. Darren's lies whispered into my ear, my parents' blind insistence on keeping the peace. No silence would have killed me. Truth set me free. Healing didn't come all at once. It was slow, like the roses that needed time to root before they bloomed. Some days the anger still clawed at me, but other days I felt something lighter, steadier peace. I started leading a small group for women who had been betrayed. Sharing my story gave my pain purpose. Watching them find strength reminded me that my own survival mattered too. My name is Amelia. This isn't a story about happily ever after. It's a story about after betrayal, after destruction, after the truth tore everything down. And sometimes, after is enough.